I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show. Today on the James Altucher Show.
I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a coach. I'm not anything, really. I enjoy this podcast, and I enjoy writing and other things. But today I talked to my good friend Tom Kelly, who is a warm-up comic for some very well-known shows. He's worked on The View, and right now he's on Tamron Hall. He's done Good Morning America and other shows. I've known him from the comedy world, but we've become good friends. Today, Tom had some questions to ask me about life, the universe, and everything. So let's go see what Tom has to say. Yeah, just to be clear, like, I hope New York City's alive. Even if it's not coming back the way it was, at least there's room for better decision makers in New York. And look, there's some bad signs and some good signs. Like, we don't know really what the financial situation will be like, a year from now, with so many New Yorkers leaving, so there'll be less taxes. And we don't know how the crime situation is shaping up. Certainly there's more crime, but you're saying your landlord wants you to commit to another year, even though...
I think my landlord is investing in fixing up the building, and I think he wants to know if I'm staying or going. Whereas for the last year, he's been letting me go month to month.
I see. So in other words, he's saying, okay, I see what you're saying. The tougher the landlord is, the more confident they are. So previously he was saying, yeah, if you could do month to month, that would be great. Now he's saying, look, it's a year or you're out. Then and the third level would be if he said, look, you're out, because I'm building and I'm investing in the city.
Yeah, and I think he's given me option 1 there, where he says, I'm fixing things up. If you want to stay, you could stay. But if you're going to go, tell me now.
All right. Yeah. That's an encouraging sign. I do think that with all the excitement of New York City reopening, that there's a good feeling in New York City. And it reminds me of the feeling in early 2002, where after 9/11, I lived right next to Ground Zero. There was a lot of excitement, even from all over the world, about rebuilding New York. Now, that excitement I am starting to feel this summer in New York City. The sad thing is, tens of thousands of businesses and restaurants, as you know, have gone out of business, and hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers have left, and there's some serious problems. But I'm hoping that it could stabilize.
Well, listen, James, I didn't mean to actually sound like I was beating you up. James Altucher, if we're officially recording, you, sir, you should run for city council, if not mayor. The problem is then you're going to have to let other people talk. And I have a lot of friends who have run for mayor or run for government jobs and they can't deal with the BS. But I think your article, if you read the bullet points of the New York is Dead article, each point was point and spot on. The only difference between my politics and yours is I would have named the article, New York is bleeding and needs CPR immediately. Somebody call an EMT, but that would not have been as good a title.
No, but you know what, though? I think you're right, because even though in the article I wrote about, not only did I write about how much I love New York City and I grew up there and I've lived there or lived in and around there all my life, but I talk about personal stories, why I would love New York City. And then I said, look, people are in denial and here are the problems. But yes, the more I think about it, the title was very aggressive and it's caused me a lot of grief.
But that's why people read it. But James, that's why people read it. Your article was aptly titled. You got people to read your points. Now, I think then people got very aggressive about it. But listen, let's go through a few quick points that nobody wants to hear about New York is Dead. And then obviously we're going to talk about me, my podcast, my life, my comedian, all at TomKellyShow.com.
We have a lot to talk about with you.
But with you, my friend, and also I've read your book and you need to fix my life up. And part of where I'm in this indecision stage is because I think New York is on a teeter-totter. I think it's about to teeter-totter back in a lot of ways. But I think you're right. One, the rich people are leaving. I don't want to buy a house or apartment in New York because I am afraid of what the taxes will be in 5 years. Two, I am a registered Democrat who votes leaning towards Democratic views. But I think the super liberals are not paying attention to the homeless and the crime and the drug use. I saw drug use. I saw heroin being shot on 72nd Street. Now, I pay extra money to live in a neighborhood where I don't see that, or I used to think so. There's a homeless guy who I talk about on my podcast, on my Tom Kelly Show podcast. He drives me nuts. Ethan Freckles. He has an Instagram account. Ethan Freckles on Instagram. He has...
Wait a second. I'm looking him up.
You look him up. Yeah, he's Instagram.com/Ethan Freckles. By the way, did I just promote a vagrant's Instagram over my own? This is why I need your help, James.
This guy's going to get, he's got 1,300 followers. Like, he's legit. Like, and he looks homeless.
He's homeless enough. But if you look down on his pictures, if you go deep, he's just a rich kid camping. And we're supporting it. And this is what we did. New York City, God bless, took out all the payphones. We took this kid who could go get a job if he showered. And instead, we're letting him camp on a stretch of Columbus Avenue that is bigger than my apartment. He has a barbecue, 3 bicycles. He has a place to sleep. He has boxes of stuff. And what do? Instead of asking him to leave or to get a job or to providing services to help get his life restarted, instead we took out the payphone and we put in a Wi-Fi booth. So now we're providing him with amenities.
So wait a second. He's not like a problem, right? And I mean,
he's not a problem.
You're right. I'm scrolling down on his Instagram feed. I think I'm looking like at his bar mitzvah pictures now or something.
Yeah,
like he's definitely. But here, I got to give him credit. He reminds me. This might get a little bit out of bounds here, but he reminds me of there's a philosopher from 500 BC. Diogenes started the cynical school of philosophy. It kind of predated the Stoicism, and basically, this was a rich guy who got shamed in business in some way, and he decided, screw it, I am not following any of the rules of society anymore. He started just, he became essentially homeless, just living in the street, peeing on the sidewalk or whatever they had in ancient Greece, and eating whatever garbage he could get his hands on, and just not caring, and he became a very happy person, and he developed a huge philosophical following that's lasted till this day. Again, someone once described the cynic school of philosophy as stoicism without clothes. So like he didn't really wear clothes. And the famous story of him was he was lying by the river and in the sun, and Alexander the Great comes up to him and says, "I'll give you anything if you stop living this way." And all Diogenes said was, "Okay, just get out of the sun. You're in my sunlight." And this guy reminds me of that. He's living a very kind of cynicism, the cynic school of philosophy way of life.
So here's my problem. Diogenes didn't live across the street from my apartment. And the problem is Diogenes, as you're calling this guy now, is he's attracting chlamydias and herpes. Who he's attracting the less noble vagrants. Like there was one guy who I call him Jesus on heroin, very, very skinny man who I actually stopped him from verbally abusing an Asian woman last August in ironically Strawberry Field of all places, the land, John Lennon's Land of Peace. He was yelling at this 4-foot tall, 70-year-old Asian lady, "You're gonna die! You're gonna die!" Well, anyway, the problem with Ethan Freckles now is Ethan Freckles has attracted the homeless guy who's now using the fire alarm box on my corner as a suntan booth for the summer.
Yeah, that's the problem right now with the Upper West Side. Parts of New York is that, and again, this is not against the homeless. There's always been homeless in many cities. But as opposed to San Francisco, I feel like, and this is nothing against San Francisco either, but I feel like the homeless in New York were treated a little differently. Like they had places to go, they got help, but now they're just sort of being let loose everywhere. And I don't understand what happened. And on top of that, crime has gone up. I mean, now when you go on the subway at night or you walk around, you're in danger of random violence. Not as much as maybe a few months ago, but the danger is still there.
So listen, I don't know what's going to happen because I am predicting some form of an uptick in COVID in September, October. I just have a feeling.
I'm glad you're an epidemiologist, Tom.
No, listen, I think so. You're not predicting it. I'm predicting something where people are going to be like, oh my gosh, should we shut down again? And I'm not saying, and if that happens, I think the one scary thing about COVID-19, listen, all the decisions have been made already. I don't want to knock anything. I would have done Cuomo in the nursing homes. I would have done that differently. I don't know if I would have done a total shutdown. I don't know. But all I know for sure, James, is nobody smarter than me has come up with a new plan.
No, I agree with you. I don't know, and this is the problem too. Take a look at restaurants or Broadway in New York City. Now, all of these things need, now that they've all gone out of business, they need new investors. The last set of investors got screwed by the lockdown. So I think it's fear of lockdown that is going to prevent some growth past where we were before. And in order for New York City to survive, it has an extremely high budget. It provides a lot of services to its citizens. It needs money. And so some of that will come up from the last bailout, but some of it you need to attract new businesses and new people. And this is a more nuanced thing as opposed to whether people are happy today or not. I think they are happier than they were a few months ago because things have opened up. But there's a lot of pain in the city too. A lot of restaurants have gone out of business. A lot of people went unemployed.
Here's the one thing that I think I was realizing in New York that your article missed.
Okay, tell me, because I want to know. I honestly want to know.
Because I think a lot of New York's problems that you were preaching about because of COVID-19 were already happening. Outside of the restaurants and theaters closing, frankly, the big banks are trying to have a smaller real estate footprint. That has been happening for 10 years. American Express has been moving to remote cubicles for years. I have an uncle who works at one of the banks on 6th Avenue. I won't say which one, but he used to have an office for years. And then they would say, hey, you know what? You don't come in that much. Why don't you work from home? He was working from home for 4 years before all this. And now that's a man who doesn't have to pay the New York City income tax. And that was happening already. I think just COVID sped a lot of that along. I also think the one thing your article missed, and you own property and a business on the Upper West Side, I think the landlords got too greedy years ago. And an easy one is, when I moved to my block, the corner of 74th and Columbus, 10 years ago, you went to the corner, and if you looked to the left, you could see a Chase Bank and a Starbucks a block north. And then if you look to the right, you could see a Chase Bank and a Starbucks a block south. Now there's only one Chase Bank and one Starbucks. The demand for real estate is dropping off, and the landlords are not lowering their prices. And this has already happened in Williamsburg. The landlords have, in New York City, a lot of them have owned their property for hundreds of years. or not hundreds, but 70 years. My landlord, my building has been in the family for 80 years. He can afford to take a hit for a year or two. The landlords are not lowering the rent. If New York City is really going to be rebound, somebody's got to be left holding the bag for a bit, and somebody's got to take a hit. And the landlords are not lowering their prices either. I told you, your partner, Donnie Zolden, told me what you guys are paying a month at Stand Up New York for rent. Not millions, but a good chunk of money.
Yeah, no, and I think, look, our landlord did give us a break for a while, and we've done well with all the loans and everything. Like Donnie, I'm giving Donnie full credit for that. Like he did an amazing job because it was hard to get those loans, and he really applied himself to it. But I don't know. I mean, some landlords are mom and pop landlords that kind of need the living, and a lot because of the rent moratorium. A lot of these people are going bankrupt. Also, there's just a lot of pain that's maybe a little under the surface now that things are opening up. Like when things open up, you see everybody dancing in the streets and stuff like that. But underneath, there's still a lot of pain. And look, I hope it gets better. You know me, like I've been supportive of everybody I can help in the city.
Yeah.
And I don't like the pain. The whole reason I wrote that article is I thought people were in denial. But like you mentioned, maybe the title was a bit aggressive. I was kind of disgusted that day how much I thought people were in denial when I saw so many businesses going out of business. I saw so many people in pain from what was happening. But of course, it took a life of its own, and I almost regret how much like anger was aimed at me.
Well, I mean, here's the problem. Would you have been better off would James, the person, have been better off not saying anything? Did that article make you any extra money? I don't know, but I think in a year or two.
No article ever makes me money.
No, but I think in a year or two, somebody's going to say, wow, that guy was kind of right. Maybe not 100% right. And Jerry Seinfeld obviously won't concede it. But listen, I'll just only speaking from me.
I'll tell you one thing, though. It was interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
But you mentioned like running for a lot of people, like high end people and low end people, or not to judge people on high end or low end, but a lot of people asked me to run for mayor or comptroller or city council. And what ended up happening was it put me in touch with a lot of mayoral candidates, comptroller candidates, other candidates. And I actually have made one endorsement. I won't really talk about it on the podcast, but I have made an endorsement for mayor. But for every office, people were asking me for endorsements. And it was because of the article.
And I'm with you on who you endorse for mayor. I don't want to drag you down that road if you don't want to go there. I think right now he's the best one. You need somebody who understands the problems of the world right now. But listen, policing, I believe it. Listen, there is inequity in policing. But why do we ask the cops to do all these crazy things? And I think you need somebody who maybe can get both sides of that equation. So I'm in favor of the guy that you endorsed without saying his name.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm not saying his name is just because, whatever. I mean, if people Google my mayoral endorsement.
He endorsed Chris Cuomo, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Cuomo for governor.
Definitely not.
But how are you? Where are you right now? You're still in Florida.
Well, I'm going back and forth. Tomorrow I'll be in New York City, actually, for the rest of the week. And then I'm going to Georgia for a little trip. Like, I still am a tax-paying resident and business owner of the great city of New York. As much as people say, if I say that, a lot of people say, don't lie to us, and they get all upset. But
actually, I'll end that last conversation with one deep thought. For however much money I make a year, I tried to do 186 days on Long Island so I wouldn't have to pay the extra 3% New York City tax. And I didn't. In the end, though, I wound up doing, because my family was driving me nuts and I was driving them even crazier, I wound up paying the New York City tax. But I tried not to. Just imagine what people smarter than me who make more than me were doing last year. How much money did they lose from people hiding in the boroughs, or not hiding in the boroughs, but hiding in the outer counties and hiding in other states?
Yeah, and it's not so much 2020. I'm worried about 2022.
Yep.
So like we're going to, 300,000 people or 300,000 families filed change of address requests outside of the city. So it was the biggest exodus ever from New York City this past year. And so the question will be what happens this year, and then what will the taxes look like in 2022? And look, a city needs a city like New York City needs their taxes to pay for the enormous services they offer, and that's what keeps businesses coming and people from
Yep.
leaving. But I do think even if rents drop, like young people are going to move there, but the big problem is crime. Like ultimately, crime will keep even the young people out, and so that needs to be stopped. And crime is up something like 200%.
Yeah, but I think the good news on crime is that once more people start coming back, you're going to have more witnesses. And that will hopefully dissuade the criminals a little bit.
I hope so.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah, more innocent bystanders. That's what New York City needs.
Right.
Talking about me. Yeah, but it's funny.
What's going on with you?
So I guess I don't know where you're starting this podcast. I'm going to pretend you're starting it now and not on 15 minutes of political talk. But I am a stand-up comedian who is known for his work warming up TV shows.
So just to mention, like, what is that? Like, when I watch, I don't know, a morning talk show like Tamron Hall or Ellen. Let's just take Ellen as a great example, or Rachel Ray, because that was a feature.
Yeah,
that show was featured in the TV show Crashing, the warm up comic. What happens? Like, people kind of get there, or the show is filmed earlier than it's taped live.
So it varies from show to show. Each show sort of is its own circus. For me, I was working at Good Morning America. There were two different versions of the show. There was a Good Morning America from 8 to 9, and then they would tape a second hour that would air at 1 in the afternoon. And they would have, and a lot of these shows have live audiences. Some of them are small, some of them are big, and regular people from around the country show up, and they need to be put into a good mood to watch the show. And the demands of the warm-up comedian are different on every show. So I worked at Good Morning America. I am known for my work at The View. For years, I worked at the $100,000 Pyramid with Michael Strahan. And the demands of the job are interesting, and they vary from show to show. At Good Morning America, it's get them up as high as possible with the least amount of BS possible, so that way the crowd can laugh for 2 hours and have fun.
What's like a typical technique? Like, and I'm just curious, like, because this is, I think this is related to public speaking. But in general, like, you get good at figuring out what parts of the audience are feeling a little down. You have to recognize that. You have to, like, pump up their energy. I think this is true. I think this is the difference between being a comic for a show and being a stand-up comic. You have to basically get their energy high.
So it's the energy high, frankly, is the end goal. They don't care if you were funny. They care whether or not they laughed at the main act. And they did the energy was high for the main act. For me, my two skills are being in the room and gravitating to misery. Just like in my relationships, I gravitate to the most miserable person in the audience. And my gift, I think, and you've seen me perform and vice versa so many times, my problem in stand-up is I very quickly let go of my act. And then my gift in warm-up and stand-up is being in the moment. And the one thing I do well as a stand-up MC, and I do very, very well as a warm-up comedian, is I create moments, whether it be, and I can let go of being funny. And I can go for the cute. I can go for the heartwarming. I can go for the emotional. And then, because it's funny, you go talk about the varying jobs of a warm-up comedian and the various tools I have in my belt, is sometimes there are some shows, like I think a lot of these late night shows, the guys do 10 minutes, they get the crowd pumped, they're laughing, and then they're done for the show. For me, sometimes I also have to stall for time. Like you used the word Rachel Ray before. Rachel Ray's warm-up comedian, this guy Joey Cola, who is the gold standard for daytime warm-ups in America, he, like if Rachel Ray is making pot roast and the pot roast isn't cooked yet, Joey has to fill time. And the same thing will happen for me if I'm, if I was at Good Morning America on a taped show and the band wasn't set up yet, I'd have to fill for time. And at Good Morning America, there were shows where I would do their outdoor summer concert series. And, like I've opened for the Jonas Brothers, 20,000 people. And there would be moments.
Let me ask you about that. You open up for the Jonas Brothers. Does any fan of the Jonas Brothers want a comedian to open up for them?
No. So, and I did that at Good Morning America. Actually, the great example is at first, no. So the trick is you have to pander too. Like, whereas if stand-up comedy is about truth, warm-up comedy is about telling them what they want to hear.
Right. And also, I feel like you mentioned something earlier, like it's about being in the moment. What do they want that moment? And in stand-up comedy, it's also sort of about being in the moment, but you can't be in the moment you have to be in the moment humorously. Like you kind of have to make them laugh at some point. And I admit there's some heartwarming moments. There's some things you can do where it's more performance than just comedy. But a lot of it is about making them laugh. Whereas I feel with warm-up comedy, it's more about, like you say, gravitating towards the miserable. By the way, in stand-up comedy, it's the opposite. You want to gravitate towards the people who are laughing the hardest because that's your customer. And
see, and I'm the opposite of that. I will go to whoever's the worst in the room and try to bring them up. I will make fun of whoever's angriest in the room. But to your point about, so like part of why I wanted to talk to you on your podcast, and I hope to God you skip all the politics we had and go straight to Tom Kelly.
All right, we'll do it. Jay, note to Jay.
Note to Jay, cut half the show, start in the middle. No, but for real, because I am, and I think this is where I'm useful to you. And why I think I'm a useful guest is if I were summing up who Tom Kelly is in a sentence here is I'm a stand-up comic. Let's be honest. I was never making that much money as a stand-up comic, okay? But the stand-up comic was, in Walmart terms, my loss leader that opened up my skills as a warm-up comedian. I was doing a lot of personal appearances and private parties. I was making $2,500 a show to do auctions for charities right before the pandemic ended. I was rich right before the end of the pandemic. If I could have done this for another 2 years at the pace I was going, I might have died of a heart attack, but I was finally making my money. For the first time in my life, I've known you about, 8 years?
Yeah.
For the first time in my 20 years in show business, I was getting ahead. Money was going into the bank.
And let me add to that, which is that people, when I was doing, when I first started doing it, and even like 2 or 3 years in, some friends of mine would ask me, like, why are you even doing this? Like, we know you're funny. Why are you actually going in front of like 30 or 40 people at a random Tuesday night at some club and telling jokes? Like, what are you getting out of that? And the reality is, it's not just about telling jokes. It's an incredibly difficult skill, but the skill is not intended to get better at performing in a club. The skill is for being the best at these other things, like whether it's a comedian in a show or funny in a TV show or a public speaker who's funnier than every other public speaker, or emceeing auctions or parties or events. Like when I would MC events in the business world after I had started doing stand-up comedy, it was like a 10x factor having that skill of stand-up comedy. Like I was so much more able to notice what was going on in the room, get people laughing, and they were shocked that they were laughing in those environments. So that's where the skill is useful.
So if James Altucher wrote a book, Skip the Line, Tom Kelly came here to be on your podcast because I want to start skipping the lines. I've been online for too damn long. This is like Black Friday lines. I got the damn TV set and nobody wants to cash me out at a Walmart is how I feel about my life. I have a great podcast about me trying to reinvent my career, Tom Kelly Show podcast. And I've been very human. I've been very exposed. I was hoping you listened to an episode or two, but you haven't yet, except for the ones you've been on, which is going to drive me crazy. But for real, I feel like I am ready for a quantum leap. I am ready for a transformation. I am hiding up here in Maine for about 2 weeks in a semi-working remote vacation and frankly, your book filled the 5-hour drive. I listened to you at 1.2 speed, and I've been writing my 10 ideas. I left the notebook in the other damn room. I'm sorry about that. But I've been writing 10 ideas. I'd probably been writing 2 to 3 ideas a day for the last week, and then probably another 5 ideas that are setups for jokes. I don't know if that counts in your 10 idea
totally
list.
Counts.
Okay.
Everything counts. Everything counts that makes your brain stretch by idea number 7 or 8. If you're saying by idea number 7 or 8, man, how am I going to get like 2 or 3 more? Those lists all count, no matter what it is.
So I came to you because I am looking for some sort of a bold way to either promote my podcast, I'm looking for, and the podcast, I'm also considering a loss leader right now. But I've taken some lessons from your book and have applied it to the podcast. Frankly, I am surprised you're not still on the New York Times bestseller list, because I have been pushing your book every week because it meant something to me.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Tom. And well, tell me what you're doing on your podcast. Well, first off, you're a warm-up comic right now for Tamron Hall. You've done Good Morning America, The View.
Yeah.
Is this a step down? I'm not that Tamron Hall's bad,
no,
but Good Morning America is huge.
Well, and we'll see right now. So, true story, I was working at Good Morning America. They were a week ahead of the pandemic. They knew it was coming. My bosses there, who love me and care about me, were giving me advice on how to perform differently because they thought the pandemic was real and coming. I think all of New York shut down on a Thursday. I got laid off that Monday or Tuesday, and I wasn't even laid off. They just stopped hiring me. I was a daily hire. So they let me go on a Tuesday, stop paying on a Wednesday, which is fine. That's how my contract is. But I joke that I am the least essential, non-essential worker in New York City. And
but I heard you saying earlier that you were doing Zoom warm-ups.
Anyway, and then I got lucky about 6 months later, a TV show, Tamron Hall, my boss, Candy Carter, who is worked at Oprah, worked at The View for years. She came up with the gimmick of basically getting to add energy to the room. She was bringing in 30 to 60 people a day on Zoom. And so when we talk about loss leader and things not necessarily paying off in the way you think, I started a podcast thinking I would go viral, I'll have sponsors, I'm going to get rich. I think the one skill I got out of my podcast was learning how to use a roadcaster so that way I could entertain people. And I actually have done very well with corporate Zoom work this year. About once a month, I've been getting a well-paying corporate gig where I'll have anywhere between 30 and 300 people in a Zoom, and I'll tell jokes, I'll do crowd work, and I make people laugh. And so I've turned this way of communicating with people into a little bit of a career.
Yeah, and I actually, for a while I was down. Like, I wouldn't do any of the Zoom stuff. I thought that's not real stand-up comedy because, for one thing, I was sitting down. But I started doing some Zoom comedy actually for Yelp. Like, Yelp has all these different markets, and you can get. And I started doing Zoom comedy for the different markets, and I was having a lot of fun because I didn't have to go anywhere and I could do stand-up.
Yeah, and you know what? Listen, I think Zoom will be a part of my repertoire forever. I am available if there's anybody looking for a private gig that doesn't want to hire James. Hire me.
Hire Tom.
Hire. You're sick of him?
I've not been doing as many lately.
No, but I'll tell you what I got out of it is, listen, this is all whether it be comedy, storytelling, whatever your art form, it's about connecting with something with people. And to your point about what you were asking about me before is, I have a gift other comedians don't have. I am going to heaven. I am a good person. I have been jokingly calling myself the self-help comedian. The subtitle for my podcast has been self-help comedy, where I'll interview people like you. I interviewed Jen Gottlieb 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I know Jen.
And actually
Jen's
taking one of your principles and applying it to my podcast of doing things radically different. Instead of doing a once-a-week show for an hour or a half an hour and letting the conversation go, I am going to do 5 20-minute podcasts this week.
Oh, that's great. I like that. It's a good experiment.
It's an experiment. I'm not going to do it forever. My commitment to my audience still is new show every Monday. I'm not letting it, and this is, and again, a piece of wisdom I got from your book. I'm not letting it drive me crazy that I essentially have divided my audience into 5 right now, because I see the numbers dropping every day.
No, but you know what? But the numbers are dropping, but your views per month and maybe even your number of unique visitors or listeners will go up. Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
What apps do you use? Actually, here's a good question. When you were judging your early success, how do you judge how many people are listening to you? I know you're successful because other people have told me so. How do you know you're successful as a podcaster?
It's really hard because, as you've probably noticed, there's no real good source of data. Like Apple sort of hides their data, and they're the main source of where people listen to podcasts. So you don't really, it's a kind of a black box. You don't really know. Usually your host will give you some estimate, but you don't really know the real number. And if the number changes, you don't know if it's because they measure. Like sometimes if you're in your car and if you're in your house and you listen both in the car and the house, they'll count that as 2 unique listeners. Sometimes they fix that, sometimes they don't. If you listen for 3 minutes, sometimes you're a listener, sometimes you're not. Sometimes they make the bar 5 minutes. So you have to also see when the algorithm changes as well. But in general, I like to see if my number of unique listeners are going up, and I look per episode to see what kind of episodes do well. And I try to measure. You measure what matters. So I try to measure as many things as possible to determine how many unique listeners I have, and am I going up, and also what don't people like, what do people like, who do people like, what categories people don't like. So, and not that I'm just going to cater to what people like, but that just gives me an idea of maybe what I need to do or where I need to improve or where I need to experiment more and so on. So I just think the main metric I use is how many people stop me in the street and say, "Oh, I love your podcast."
Okay, so and that's what I've been using right now is I've been using, my metric has been who writes me, who texts me. I've been trying to create a community where they could all talk to each other and maybe that would snowball. But instead, all they're doing is DMing me on Instagram and it's driving me crazy. But I don't want to, in fact, but I feel like I've been looking gift horses in the mouth and I've been like, please comment over here on my podcast.com, podcast.tomkellyshow.com. And they're all like, nah, I'd rather interact with you directly.
Here is the key, though. Always make an episode that people are going to want to share. So you think in advance, why will people want to share this, and you aim towards that. So sharing is when people share your podcast, that is the best way to get new listeners and build the audience. And so whether it's an article or a podcast or your comedy, you always want to give people multiple reasons. Like, oh, this was a comedian where I learned something, or this is a comedian where I was laughing like every 10 seconds, or this is a comedian that made me feel good. Like, so when you're thinking about comedy, why are people going to share you as opposed to somebody else? Or say, you got to listen to this one comedian. Why are they going to say that? You have to know that answer in advance.
So why are you having me on the show then?
Well, because here's one thing I've noticed. When I have my friends on the show and we're having real conversations as opposed to like me trying to figure out how to interview, those are my best episodes.
Are they?
Yeah.
But do they rate as well? Because with me...
Yeah, that's what I mean. They rate as well.
Do they? See, me, when I have celebrities on, they rate higher. And when I have friends on, they rate lower.
Celebrities are the worst for me. Like
Really?
if I had, I won't name any names, but if I like, sometimes I've had like incredibly famous people, and those have been the lowest downloads of all. And sometimes if it's just me and a friend telling stories, then those are the best. Like, because people again like the story, they like the rapport, and maybe they learn something.
Well, if you like that, you know what I'm going to do? You know what? Listen, at this point, if you want to find my journey, I'm at the TomKellyShow.com is where you can find all my stuff, including my Venmo, America. I'm poor. But for real, if this podcast were a conversation, I've had a fire in my stomach for about, I guess if I came up to Maine on June 1st, it's June 14th now. So for 2 weeks, I've had a fire in my belly saying I need to talk to James because you've had a few impacts on my life.
Tell me what you wanna know. We talk all the time. Tell me what has been on your mind.
So
like,
I'll tell you what's been
thing?
success. So I need to figure out how to promote this damn thing, and it's not. And I need to figure out how to get myself out there. I need to break through the glass wall. So listen, with the podcast, I'm using your spoken wheel theory, which is the podcast may be the loss leader, just like stand-up. But maybe through the podcast, I've made a few deeper connections with people. Like, I've met Jen Gottlieb, got some advice there. I had a great conversation with Stacey London. Actually, doing the podcast got me on a TV show, got me booked for a TV show on the Reels channel. It's kind of like I Love the 80s, but on Reels, on the Reels network. And I've never heard of the show, but a friend of mine booked me based on the fact that he saw me repurposing my podcast and putting video clips on Instagram. And he's like, oh, Tom can talk to a camera now. He's doing okay. So that's how I got the booking. Now, how much money did I make on that show? Not a damn penny. But maybe that'll pay off down the road too. I'm planting seeds. So my slogan has been, I'm trying to take my 2020 lemons and turn it into 2021 lemonade. My more realistic slogan might be, I'm taking my 2020 lemons and making 2022 lemonade, or I'm taking my 2020 shit and using it as fertilizer for my 2022 forest.
All right, let me just tell you, I think you're overthinking all of this. I think it's like almost like take a step back and say, and you're doing this. You just said you were doing this. Yeah. What can I do with my podcast that nobody else is doing? Because there's a billion podcasts out there that interview people. There's a billion podcasts about, money or even comedy or entertainment. Like, what can I do that's an experiment? So you're starting to do this, but I would think of even more, like, just go crazy. Like, you know what? Why the hell have you not interviewed, what's his name, Eric Freckles yet?
Oh, Ethan Freckles, because I'm afraid of actually getting into a fight with him. Yeah, that's actually a good point, though. Bringing Ethan Freckles up to the apartment. Jeez, that's an idea.
Yeah, Ethan Freckles is homeless, and now he's in my apartment. Ethan, how's it going? Boom. Nobody is turning away from that podcast from that moment on. And then people will share it like, oh my God, you listen to this guy. This guy's like homeless, and this guy Tom Kelly just had him on his podcast, and man, it's weird being homeless. And I don't know, whatever he's going to say. Like, there's going to be some story out of that. But like, let me ask you a question. Why do you even know all about Ethan Freckles? Like, he's homeless in front of you. Did you like talk to him?
I know enough. You know what it is? I hate Ethan. And you want to know why I haven't had him on the podcast is I don't like looking at him every morning. How about that for the meanest thing ever?
Well, I think also you don't like a rich kid who became homeless.
He has a nicer cell phone than my father. I think there's real homeless people out there who need the help. And this kid has resources and he's turning them down for some reason. I think that's fair. Like, I don't like people who, like, I really don't like people who inherit a lot of money. Because I find them to be, they think that they're like their dad or their mom or grandpa who became the original billionaire. They think they're like that person, and yet they're not. They're usually dicks in some way, and then they don't realize that. And also the other thing is, they're really bad with money. Like, I've had children of billionaires borrow money from me and never pay it back, and I just don't like those people. Yeah, I mean, look, I brought my notebook, my little comedy notebook. I'm gonna write that one down. That's a brilliant idea. I think the thing is, I think I have a good product out right now with the podcast. Even as it's evolving, I think the experiment is the show, to your point. I think you're using the spokes and wheels theory. The joke has been Tom Kelly burdens celebrities with his problems.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good thing. And I tend to do that too. Like, for instance, when I had Jordan Peterson on the show, and that was a very popular episode, and he's a well-known guy, but he's a trained psychologist. I basically use that as a private therapy session on the podcast. So those are like my favorite podcasts where I'm like, we're basically doing therapy for each other back and forth.
No, and to your point, I had 2 therapists on the show. And each therapist gave me basically a free session. I had a woman who was in prison, Allison, the prison break life coach. She was in prison for 7 years, and she basically talks to people about how we're all in our own figurative prisons. Like, I learned from her that I might be a prisoner of the stories I tell myself, that maybe I go into a good comedy club and I feel like I'm not the best guy in the room. I still feel like I don't deserve to be there. I've been in comedy for about 20 years, if you want to start the clock honestly. We could argue about whether or not I've done 20 years of hard work on it, but 20 years.
So it's quite possible in the hierarchy you've created for yourself, which is the comedy world, you walk into a comedy club, and let's look at the other people who've been doing it for 20 years, or even less than 20 years. There might be Andrew Schultz, Chris Stefano, Tim Dillon. These are the up-and-coming people. Then there's the, people who've been doing it more, like the Dave Chappelles, the Chris Rocks. But there's quite a few people. The 20-year point is kind of like, or the 15 to 20-year point is their breakthrough point where they get their TV show. They start, filling up arenas or theaters as opposed to clubs.
So you just had a good point. So here's where I'm coming to you for free therapy.
Sure.
I feel like I have been hurt by a stigma of being the daytime warm-up guy. Even though I'm making a living off it, I think if I were to go to even your club or some of the downtown clubs, I think that you get 2 types of dirty looks. Dirty look number one is, oh my gosh, this guy is a daytime warm-up and he thinks somebody. And then the other dirty look is, Tom Kelly gets that kind of work. I'm so much better than him. And I have always felt uncomfortable going to the bar to do the hang. Actually, that's your like Donnie used to tell me, and they'll even say you're supposed to do it down at the downtown clubs or at the comic strip. Go do the hang. And I'm like, every time I'm hanging, that's a minute I'm not making money.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mention that, because even at my own club, I can't hang at the bar because I am so bad at socializing. Like, everyone's just looking at the TVs, watching sports. I have no idea what to say to anybody. Even at my own place, I feel uncomfortable socially, so I have to leave.
And listen, and is this a true story? I felt the way I know the James Altucher story of becoming a comedian was you started doing comedy to be better at the things you were doing. It was a dream of yours. Yeah. And then you bought Stand Up New York because you weren't getting stage time anywhere else.
That is totally untrue.
No, I like that version of the story, though, because I am ready to skip the fucking line. I've been online a long goddamn time, and I don't know if I need an email list, a fairy godmother. Listen, and all the good things that came to me in my life. Here's a true story that you don't know about me, James. In 2006, I was producing a web TV show, and the gimmick was Tom Kelly quit comedy to move to Florida to be a male mermaid in a mermaid show. It was called The Little Merman. I still own it. It's buried on YouTube. It's hard to find, but it's on YouTube if you dig for it. And I literally was learning to be an underwater dancer, and that's when I got the call.
What the hell?
Yeah.
There's such a thing as an underwater dancer?
Look up Weeki Wachee Springs if you want a second of knowing Tom Kelly a little bit better. And true story, I was in much better shape than I'm in now, and I was basically learning to be a male mermaid in a mermaid show, and that's when I get a call from Barbara Walters' office saying that Rosie O'Donnell had recommended me to be the new warm-up comedian at The View. And I had nothing to do with that. Those were seeds I planted. I thought the seeds dried up, and they didn't come growing until 3. They were like you know what it is? It was like the fucking cicadas. My dreams were like the cicadas. They didn't come out till 17 years later. And I'm kind of ready for my next cicada coming.
Yeah, and look, here's just a couple of things to unpack there. First off, we all get put in. We all put our. It's like your friend said, or the Prison Break story therapist. She's right. You. It's not. I'm going to use different words. It's not like you put yourself in this, or you told this story about yourself, like you're going to be a good comedian in the stand-up clubs. Is that you put? I'll put it a little differently. You put yourself in that hierarchy where you're judging yourself relative to the people who, perform in stand-up comedy clubs 10 to 15 times a week, and that's a brutal. That's a brutal hierarchy because there's only a very limited supply of people who are doing that. The club owners know them. By the way, I'm looking at this Wikiwachi Springs. This is insane. These mermaids, but but okay. So you put yourself in that hierarchy, but meanwhile, you've got you built these incredible skills for the other things. It's the spoken wheel approach. The stand-up comedy world is just one spoke, but I put myself in that hierarchy as well, and you feel miserable all the time because there are some that are really great at that type of audience, and they're always going to shine, and they're always going to get like a laugh every 10 seconds, and they're great at it. Yeah. And then there's also the people who have been doing it, who are friends with all the club owners, and they're just going to shit on you all the time. It's like unless you're willing to sacrifice your life for the stand-up comedy club, you're not going to make money at it, and you're going to feel bad all the time because again, every now and then you're going to bomb because there's like 12 people in the audience and they just don't like you. They wanted barbecue and you're giving them sushi. And B, there's just some club owners are not going to like you because you're not edgy enough, or you're too edgy, or you're not diverse enough, or many other reasons, or maybe other comedians are putting you down because they want time. Like it's a very cutthroat world. So you have to kind of say, okay, look, a good show is when I build my skills. And then if for whatever reason I don't do a show in the stand-up world for a few weeks or a few months or a year, like in the pandemic, you're building your skills in other ways. As long as you're there's no goal. It's not about winning the game. It's about playing the game. And so you just want to keep playing the game and not associate yourself with the hierarchy that a goal implies. Like, oh, this person made it to have his own sitcom on NBC. That's the goal. Well, you're more about, I want to improve my skills so I get these opportunities like The View or Tamron Hall Show or emceeing auctions. You're building like this incredible skill set that, by the way, is a very, very difficult skill. Like people don't realize this about stand-up comedy. It's not all about the humor. It's about crowd work. It's about likability. It's about finding those emotional moments with the audience. It's about so many different things. The stand-up club, that's just 50 to 100 people to 200 people on one particular night. It's like an inconsequential amount of people compared to
here's
even
a
your
question
podcast.
for you. Are you still getting up?
I stopped just in the past like month or so. I've kind of made a decision that I'm going to slow it down just because I don't really enjoy it as much because right now you have to travel a little bit more, particularly when things were closed, and it's a lot of work. Even going to stand up New York, which was across the street from where I lived, I would have to prepare for hours beforehand. I'd go there at the beginning of the show just to watch the people come in so I could, see who I'm going to make jokes about when I do crowd work. And then you kind of stay afterwards because it seems like a little rude to just leave right away. And so it's to go up for 15 minutes is like a 3 or 4 hour adventure. And when you have to travel, sometimes then I started traveling around the country and even other countries. And then it's a lot of work for it was interesting. It's a story I could tell, but I decided, you know what? I'm going to spend that time now learning other skills because I have this skill to the level I want to have it. And so now I'm going to learn other skills to add to my life.
So I need 2 things in my life right now. One, whether apply to stand-up, warm-up, or hosting work, or getting my own show. Like that was my always, what's funny? My dream has always been, quote unquote, getting my own show. I don't know what the fuck that means, but getting my own show.
But that's a good question too. Like TV sucks right now. Like on the one hand, it feels like there's more opportunities than ever to get on a show just because there's so many streaming services. But that means also there's just like no pay. It's such a competitive world. There's no pay for this. You're not going to get
So
paid
here's how
well.
I feel about TV and the comedy clubs, frankly. And I think what I need is new doors to knock on, and I think that'll help me have my quantum leap, and I'm starting to work on that a little bit. But TV is like the hot girl that you wanted to date in high school. Then 35 years later, she's gained weight. She isn't as attractive as she used to be, but you still want to date her because she's the girl you had a crush on 35 years ago. And that's how I feel about wanting a network show and perform clubs in New York City.
I've pitched what I think is great ideas, but also what agents think are great ideas at least 9 different times to the television world. The last several times, I probably pitched to on average of 9 different networks with a top agent by my side, with everybody wanting my success. And it's just a difficult world with very little reward. It's a difficult world to break in with very little reward. And you're right. I think that is a good analogy. Like, we all kind of want it for some reason, but I'm able, so it got to the point where right now, actually, I'm considering being a regular on some new show, but I've like barely been able to return their phone calls. I'm just not that interested anymore in that. And it's not that I've lost interest, it's that I realize it's not as worth it as I thought and everybody was telling me. It doesn't really add to your credentials. What really adds to your credentials is providing value that nobody else is providing. And whether that's in television or your podcast or art writing or something, it might not be in a TV show. Like most of these actors I see on Netflix shows, I've never seen them before and I'm never going to see them again. That's television.
Well, going that way for a second, I would love I would love to be on somebody else's show right now. And I'll tell you the one thing I liked about working at Good Morning America, the one thing I like about doing stand-up shows at the clubs around New York City is somebody else does the dirty work. Like I used to be on headline news all the time on a show called The Daily Share. I think you were on it back in the day. Or were you on CNBC back then?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, but what I loved about being a talking head was they'd give you the car. You would show up. You go to CNN headquarters. You go into a room with just a damn camera. You make your jokes. You go home, and either people followed me or they didn't. I do need a certain part of my life where I feel like I'm doing too much of the lifting. Like I have to record on the Roadcaster. I have to set up the microphone. I have to do the editing. I'm at a point where I either need an assistant, but I can't find an assistant who can do the stuff that I'm doing.
But let me ask you a question. Like, what for? What's the real question that you really want to ask that if you had the answer would provide value in your life? Like one thing I'm hearing is that you want to know simply what to do next. Should you put more, how should you started off saying, well, how do I promote the podcast? But really I think you want to know what to do next. And it's not warm up stand-up comedy. It's not necessarily the podcast, although you're doing well at it and it's building and you're experimenting. You kind of want to figure out what's going to be the thing that breaks through. So you're making not just a living, but like a great living and that you love doing it. But how do you formulate that question? Like you have skills at stand-up comedy. Now you're building skills at podcasting. You've done let's call it warm-up comedy, a little different than stand-up comedy. You have skills at that. Is it that you want to figure out how to use these skills in some new thing, or what do you want to do?
I'm ready. You know what? I'm ready for something new, man. I mean, listen, stand-up is a gift and a curse. I actually also have a job ghostwriting for morning radio shows at iHeartMedia. So I have
What
cleaned
does that mean?
up.
How do you get a job ghostwriting for morning shows?
I don't want to get too into it because I don't want other people to discover the business and get into it. But I basically ghostwrite for a couple of morning radio shows around the country. They know who I am. They're paying me money and health insurance. So I have things coming in.
But what does it mean to ghostwrite for morning show? Like, do you give them jokes?
I write up ideas. and jokes and topics that I would talk about. So like if James were to do a daily morning show, you would subscribe to my newspaper.
Oh, I love this idea because, for instance, let's say somebody like Avi Loeb, the Harvard astronomy professor, who just recently wrote a book about and this is a Harvard astronomy professor. He's convinced, and he writes a whole book to describe it. And he's been on this podcast. He's convinced that a UFO made by aliens has recently crossed through our solar system, and he makes kind of the proof for it. So that might be an idea for a morning radio show.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So what I'm looking to do, if I just, keeping this focus on the glamorous parts of my career, I'm looking to make, let's say, whatever money I'm making now, put it on the side. I would love my podcast to make 200 grand a year. I mean, which sounds crazy.
No, it's doable.
Yeah, I would love my podcast to make 200 grand a year so I could pursue more creative things in not just my business life and my performing life, but maybe it's time to start a personal life. You've been married 2 to 3 times, twice in the time that,
Right.
Like the joke about me right now is that I want to graduate straight to my trophy wife. At this point, if there are any young women listening to this show, I'm damaged goods for not being damaged goods. I'm 40 something and single, and I'm damaged goods because I don't have an ex-wife. People wonder what the hell's wrong with him that he never got married in the first place. Is he gay? Does he have commitment issues?
This is such a valuable service for all business owners, big businesses, small businesses, doesn't matter. I wish I had this in the many different businesses that I've started. Sometimes it seems like your business is humming, but then suddenly you don't understand it. You're starting to fall behind. You're not understanding where your costs are, where your revenues are, where your payments are. Teams are buried in all sorts of like BS work, and you can't seem to close the books. So you need like one dashboard, one source of truth. I'm jealous of this business, NetSuite from Oracle, of course, NetSuite by Oracle. I wish I'd come up with this idea. It's a brilliant concept to have all your business intelligence on one dashboard. This is why you need to know these 3 numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. So 37,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, your KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/James. That's netsuite.com/James to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/James.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
So a lot of people have been asking me, hey, how do I learn how to play chess, or how do I get better at chess? And I do want to recommend a good site. I have no financial benefit in recommending this. If you go to jamesaltuchershow.com/chessmood, it's by far my favorite chess site for learning. There's like 400 hours of instructional video, right from beginner to openings to analysis of interesting games. That's jamesaltuchershow.com/chessmood. And you get about 20 days for free. And just to try it out or do whatever you want with it, jamesaltuchershow.com/chessmood.
So now I've heard you say that, okay, in the comedy world, you're sort of middle of the road and people are looking down at you. In the relationship world, I'm damaged goods. In the podcasting world, I'm not getting enough celebrities on, so my podcast is not getting out there. Like, tell me You also told me Rosie O'Donnell recommended you to Barbara Walters, who then called you while you were being a merman. And so that there's great stuff too. So like, what's the best thing? What's the thing you love most right now?
What I love most right now is I'm enjoying the podcast whining about my problems. Like right now, it sounds stupid, but I'm shifting my focus where I'm enjoying trying to break through.
Well, okay.
I'm enjoying, like if I weren't trying to break through, I wouldn't be having this great conversation with you.
So let's put a pin in that. That's one thing, is that you're enjoying a podcast where you're vulnerable and you're talking to people in different aspects of life who are giving your insight into your vulnerability. And by the way, what's great about being vulnerable is vulnerability buys freedom. Once you admit to everything, no one could say, Tom, you're a shitty this or that. You're like, I know, I already spoke about that to millions of people on my podcast. So that's good.
You know what scares me, James? So I actually had a great year in this pandemic. I wasn't making the money I was making before the pandemic, but I had money coming in. I had health insurance. I was entertaining 30 to 60 people a day, which is more than a lot of comedians. And you know what I'm afraid of, James? The world going back to normal.
Sure.
How about that? I actually adapted very well to the pandemic. I started going for bike rides. I got time with my mom and dad. I got to be a good uncle for a little bit. The one thing I wanted to do more of that I didn't start doing till now is travel. Like right now, I'm podcasting from a beach house in Maine. I got an off-season rental. It was cold a couple of nights, but it was toasty for a couple of others. But I'm in Maine. I biked I biked 23 miles today. I saw a lighthouse. I was away from Ethan Freckles, the homeless guy on my street corner. I like that stuff.
By the way, I will say, to me, you sound happier or filled with more well-being, let's call it, than you were, let's say, 1 year ago today. Then I think you were a little bit more anxious about what was going on. And now you have a couple of spokes happening, which is one spoke is writing for morning radio. Another spoke is podcast. Another spoke is you're still doing Tamron Hall, right? Like how are you doing that?
I'm doing
remotely?
Tamron Hall. I don't know. So Tamron Hall is one more week, and then I don't know what's going to happen for September. I'm looking at, I guess here's the right thing, James, is I want to hang on to the best parts of the pandemic without going backwards. Like I want.
All right, that's a great question. That is a great question. So that is a pivotal question. So you wanna figure out a way to use these skills you've developed, but while living the lifestyle you want to live. Like you were happy when you just said you biked 30 miles. Like you can't. You're not going to do that in New York City and then perform at grungy stand-up clubs in New York City all night long. So okay, so a couple of things you've mentioned though contribute to this type of lifestyle, which is a podcast you could do from anywhere. But like you said, you're experimenting, and I would hit the accelerator on experimenting on the podcast, and you're doing this morning radio thing, which, by the way, to me, all the stuff you're doing sounds really cool. Like, I want to try being a warm-up comedian, and you've been doing it for like every show in the world. Like, that sounds like a cool job, because as opposed to a club, those people want to laugh. They get what you're doing, and the audience wants to help you do well at your job. And I imagine it as a warm-up comedian, and it's a captive audience, because they're there because they're excited about who they're going to see, and they realize this is part of the game.
So for the sake of this moment, let me have a minute of confidence. For this moment of confidence, let's say I might be one of the best warm-up comedians in the city, if not the country.
I'm willing to believe it.
For the sake of the story, let's believe this.
I know
this is
quite
Irish.
a few warm-up comedians, and you could be the best of all these people I know who are warm-up comedians.
But now this is Irish Catholic humility kicking in there, but where it's hard to say that. But for the sake of the story, let me say this. What is my secret to being the best warm-up comedian in the country is I'm aiming much higher than being a warm-up comedian. And I think the guys and girls I know who are great at doing warm-up work are the ones that don't go in and say, I'm okay with it. All right, that's enough. Like a couple of people in the last couple of weeks have said, Tom, I think I just want to be a warm-up comedian for the last couple of years of my career.
Okay, but by the way, I'm going to stop you there. And I'm sorry I interrupt. The word just is lazy thinking.
No, and I get, yes. And that's also how people look at me. Like, and I'm like, fuck you, just.
Yeah.
Fuck you, just.
If you say the word just, it means there's some giving up. And so you have to justify what you're doing. Oh, I'm just going to be a warm-up comedian because it has to be followed by a because I don't want to do this, or I can't do this, or no one's giving me this opportunity, or this makes life easier because I don't have to think about my career. Like, there's something always wrong with the just. Like, oh, I just want to get settled down and have kids. Well, you've just that's a lazy way to think about how to have a meaningful and life improving relationship. Is, oh, I just want to have kids, or I just want to have a nice little small apartment by the beach. It's lazy thinking.
Well, along those lines is, listen, I feel like listen, to your point, I've done all these amazing things. I've performed at Radio City Music Hall. I have performed in front of crowds for 20,000 people. I've done Zoom for a year. I'm one of 4 people doing warm up on Zoom every day. So to your point, I'm very accomplished, but I also feel like there is a next level that I'm just missing. And I don't know if it's maybe because I can't beat the algorithms when I'm using Facebook ads. Like, I feel like I have something that I'm saying that I'm not getting out to the world, and that I just keep tripping. Like, I feel like I'm Charlie Brown kicking a damn football, and I can't kick the damn football into the field goal.
I totally get it. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you some more questions. So for the morning radio stuff that you write, what do you like today or yesterday? Whenever the last time you did this, what did you write? What did you write for today?
And again, I don't want to go too far down the morning radio show road, because I think I'm starting to break a couple of NDAs with this stuff. But but yeah, like, I write bullshit for us to, like, actually a topic that one of the stations used today was, are you the kind of person who can't leave your house without your Apple Watch fully charged? Okay. And then people started calling it, can you not leave your house when your devices are charged?
So what does that mean? So they do a segment where they get, do you find experts
and
for
then you
them?
hope that, like, I find conversations that people would call in for a big thing.
And why did you come up with that one? Like, was there news today about the Apple Fitbit or whatever?
No, I can't flip the computer because there's too many wires in, but there's a beautiful beach right behind you. And this morning I woke up, I was going to go bike riding for 20 miles, and my watch wasn't charged, and I couldn't enjoy the workout unless I had 20 miles of tracking in. So instead, I had a cup of coffee while I waited for the watch to charge.
That's funny. So that gave you the idea to write that. You don't look at the local news or whatever?
Oh, and then you look at the news and stuff, but here's the thing with the internet now, and I think it's the same thing about comedy, is everybody's looking at the local news. That's why, listen, by the time you watch Jimmy Kimmel, there's been a million tweets that are just as funny as whatever Jimmy Kimmel says. That's why late night comedy is dead. To your point about TV sort of being dead, yeah, I kind of try to rely on personal experience. Actually, a great one that I got from a waitress up here in Maine was I kind of asked her out, and I asked her if she was single, and she said, I'm in between relationships. And my feeling was, well, what the fuck does that mean?
That's a great topic.
Yeah. What does it mean when someone's in between relationships? If you're in between relationships, that should be when I'm allowed to hit on you. Right. I don't want to hit on you when you're at the end of a relationship or at the beginning of a relationship. That's the sweet spot. And what it really meant was, Tom, I don't want to date you.
Right, because what is it? What the word "in between" sort of implies she knows when the next one's going to start and who it's going to be with, and so which she doesn't know. So there's it's kind of like an implicit lie when someone says, "I'm in between relationships."
Well, I think it was a graceful way of saying I don't want to lie and say I'm single, or actually, here's the right thing. The way to say it is, I don't want to lie and pretend I have a significant other, but I don't want to give you the false impression that you should be flirting. Is what she really was saying.
And were you able to say, "Hey, I warm up The View. I'm the warm-up comic for The View"?
You know what? I
warmed up to the Jonas Brothers. I was their fluffer.
You know what? Here's a thing that I like to say, James. If you have to say, "Do you know who I am?" to people, and it generally means they don't.
Well, that's a good point. But here's what you could say. Here's what you could say, though. You kind of have to give off the aura of, here's the reason we all do things, really. In part because we love it, because you love doing comedy and this stuff, but also in part because you want to impress other people. It's okay to admit that. And so it's not like you want to say, hey, man, I'm like, you should go out with me. I'm the warm-up comic for the Jonas Brothers. But it's sort of like you have to exude it a little more.
You know what? You want a funny one, James? Here's a funny one about you that I like about you. Here you are a multimillionaire, blah, 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 lost his money 3 times, regained it 3 times, blah, 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 owned half the club, blah, blah, blah. What I liked about you is for the first 2 months I knew you, I thought you were the guy who fixed the comedy club's computers.
Yeah, that.
No, and that's your vibe. I like that, but I like that vibe.
I look
it's
like
why
the IT guy.
Yes, you were the IT guy on the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
Just
the comedy IT guy. Like I would go around all the comedy clubs fixing their comedy computer. This computer's not funny enough. I need to plug it out and plug it in again.
You know what? If I am picking your brain for advice, like for new guys starting podcasts, how are you suggesting they get the word out they have a podcast?
You can't. So the only way is this is why, like, marketing a podcast is one of the most frustrating things in the world because nothing works. The only thing that works is having a podcast. Here's the way to think about it. You want a podcast that people cannot not listen to. So what I mean is they have to listen to it because if they don't listen to it, they're missing out on some critical piece of information that will either help their lives or help them communicate better with their friends. Like, you want the sort of podcast that they're going to say at a party, like, oh my gosh, I just listened to this one story on Tom Kelly's podcast that blew my mind and changed me in some way. They can't not listen to it because the next one might change them even more. And so that's the best way to market the podcast. Like, I mean, some of the first few podcasts I did, the first few episodes I did were with celebrities, but really it's when, I would ask questions, like for instance, I was, this is just a small example, but I was talking to Coolio in 2014 on my podcast and he's saying all this stuff about, his rap career, but then it's like, what happened to you? And he's like, oh, well, I had some problems with cocaine. I had to get over that. And then I got interested in cocaine. I'm like, wait. You have problems with cocaine. Like, how do you get over that? And so here's Coolio talking about how he got over his addiction problem. I've never seen an article about that, about one of the most famous rappers of all time. So it's like whenever you get curious, it's your unique curiosity, and you're a very curious person. Like you're asking yourself, what does it mean to be in between relationships? Like, you have to just like dive into really deep. You have to not think about what's going to make this a good podcast. You have to dive in really deep. What are you personally curious about? And nothing else is more, it's your podcast. Nothing else is more important than getting the answer to that question. The other thing I learned about Coolio, just to mention that episode again, is he wrote lyrics for 17 years every single day before he had a hit. And that was an interesting lesson for me. I thought this guy was like God's gift from heaven in rapping talent. He wrote lyrics every day for 17 years before he had one single hit. And so, you just have to be really curious to get the podcast out there.
So did you have with the podcast, U Squared and Price Pritchett, right?
No.
Okay. U Squared, we'll put U Squared on the side for a second, but you know what the concept of a quantum leap is?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have your quantum leap moment with podcasting was there one moment where suddenly things started happening?
No, I feel like I'm always learning, but
was it always snowball? Like for the numbers, let's start with the numbers for a second.
Okay.
You're a data guy. Was it snowballing,
I had a quantum leap moment with writing, and writing led to an audience, which led to the podcast. So my quantum leap with writing was around 2010. And before that, I was a quirky writer. I was always known as a financial writer. I wrote for the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal. I wrote about like stocks and finance, but I was always quirky. I'd always include a story. I was probably a little bit more literary than the average financial writer. I would definitely say that was my uniqueness in financial writing. But then in 2010, I had this moment where I realized, you know what? All these financial writers I know, or talking heads on the news, they're all just full of shit. Like they're all lying all the time. I know all of them. They've all gone broke, or some of them are broke right now, and they're on TV in their suits talking about what stocks people should buy. And so I decided I'm just going to admit everything. I've been broke several times. I've been miserable. I've been suicidal. I've been married and unmarried. And I've been cheated on. I've been this. I've been that. And this is when I realized what I said earlier. Vulnerability buys freedom. And that's not why you be vulnerable. Well, maybe it is. Freedom is a key component of feeling good about yourself. And I realized for my writing, nobody wants to hear about Apple stock for the billionth time. They want to hear, and no, by the way, they don't want to hear about me going broke. They want to hear that somebody, or that many people out there, and it's exemplified by the way I would tell my story, somebody has had miserable moments just like them, and they've tried to bounce back, or they're trying to bounce back, or they did bounce back, or here's what was happening at their lowest point, which nobody ever admits. Even now, when people try to admit it, they're always like, oh, good thing I have this and this. Like, people are afraid to admit, they're afraid to be really vulnerable because they're worried about what other people are going to think of them. And that was my quantum leap moment, was really diving deep into writing about the things I was afraid of and failed at. Like, I wrote for an entrepreneurship blog for a while as well, where I said, this is how I failed as an entrepreneur when I failed. Nobody wants to hear like how you made like $100 million. They want to hear like when you went broke and then bounced back. And, or here's when I got heckled at stand-up comedy. No one wants to hear about how, I wanted to stand-up comedy and it was just great all the time. They want to hear about when you failed at it. And you're doing that now with your podcast. You're being vulnerable.
Like, it's funny. You hit a few nails. Through you, I can see where certain things have done well for me. I'm owning my mess. I'm trying to remember I'm trying to turn my midlife crisis into a midlife renaissance. And
by the way, I was your age when all this. Like, how old are you right now?
I just turned 45 last week.
Okay, so in 2010, I was 42. But I would say I really hit the stride with it like around 2013 when I had this book, Choose Yourself, come out, and I was about 45. So, and then right after that, I started doing stand-up. So, and by the way, the thing that was keeping me back in stand-up was I didn't know how to translate that vulnerability and that I was doing so well with not only in writing, but in my podcast. I was having a hard time translating that into stand-up. And I think what was holding me back at stand-up was trying to be too much like other comedians I would see. And I see podcasters do that as well. They're like, okay, this guy just wrote a book. I'm going to interview them and then I'll get the same downloads as Joe Rogan or whatever. And it just doesn't work that way. You always have to find your new thing. You don't want to be the better podcast. You want to be the only podcast. Or you don't want to be the better warm-up comedian. You want to be the only warm-up comedian who does what you do. And probably for a warm-up, that's why Rosie O'Donnell would recommend you to Barbara Walters. There's some aspect of what you do there that's the only. Like, you're not just like a rah-rah energy guy. You probably do hit on some emotional level that the rah-rah guys don't hit, is my guess.
Yeah, and I guess where I'm at, I'm trying to find my unique, if my body is a chorus, if each skill is a chorus, I'm trying to get them to sing together in my own unique way. I'm trying to make my inner boy band doesn't have harmony. Like it sounds stupid, but I really do mean that. I work hard at being a good human being. When I joke that all the other comedians we know are going to hell, they're not all going to hell, but a lot of them are. But a couple of them.
I would say most of them are, which is why my wife is glad that I don't do as much comedy as I used to, because most of them are.
But can I take being a good person, maybe to your point about being in tune to emotional energy and my own vulnerability, and taking that somewhere? And that's sort of what I put on the table.
And your ability to communicate. Like I started writing in 1990. My first published article, or let's just say my first book, was not until 2004, so 14 years later. And I didn't really hit my stride till 20 years, almost to the day after I started writing. You've put in that 20 years building a skill of communicating, and now you just got to go raw and you. And then that's what's going to propel the podcast. That's what's going to propel the warm-up. And doesn't mean talking about yourself. It means talking about yourself in a way that you're really talking about everybody. So it's not just saying I went broke in this special way. It's that I went broke just like everybody else who's afraid to admit it. And here's what I did. And I'm talking to them about them, but using myself as the example, not bragging. Oh, I was, the worst in the world. It's just the skills of communicating help you communicate a message so that they feel that it's happening to them, or that you're speaking directly to them. And I bet you do that with the warm up, with it sounds like you're doing that, or starting to do that with the radio stuff. You're doing it with starting to do it with the podcast, and then you experiment with that. Like, and the experimenting never ends. Like, with writing, how do you experiment? Like, well, one time I was frustrated with my relationship with one of my 13-year-old daughters, and I wrote a letter from her to me where she was just complaining about me, and everyone related to that. So, or I wrote another article, which is I wish she was a lesbian, because guys suck, and guys know they suck, and most women know guys suck, and so people kind of related to that, or they're shocked by it. So there's a little bit of shock value without being on purpose provocative. There's always a little shock value. You always have to say, with everything you do, you always have to say, what am I doing that no one else has ever done before?
Well, I'll tell you two things that have stuck out in what you've just said in the last few minutes. One, I like your phrase, aura of confidence.
I don't even know if I use that phrase.
Or you use the word aura of something. Like we were talking about being at the bars and stuff like that. Exude. Okay, I'm actually taking notes.
And not in a fake way. Like, you should know who you are. Like, so that, and that's why vulnerability buys freedom. Like, if you're a screw up in some way, just being comfortable with that, as opposed to thinking, oh, what's she going to think of me if she thinks I'm a screw up? Okay, I'm a screw up, but I still open up for Barbara Walters and the Jonas Brothers and fill tens of thousands of seats. I have that skill that other people don't have.
So one thought, and it's funny, when I booked this, I thought you were going to say something like, all right, Tom, all you need is an email assistant on Fiverr. I thought you were going to give me something much less deep. So thank you for this conversation. When I thought I was coming here to help, I thought I was coming here to say, all right, James is going to help me promote the Tom Kelly Show podcast. And he's going to say, do this on Fiverr, get this app for your email list, and hire this guy as your personal assistant. You gave me a couple of deep emotional thoughts here, because the one thing I think I'm missing that I'm getting from talking to you is I need to also imply maybe a happy ending each episode, or maybe I need those or show some growth at the end of each episode.
Or maybe give a cliffhanger each episode. By the way, I haven't seen many podcasts give cliffhangers at the end of each episode. I don't really do that. Like, I don't close an episode by saying, and then I went broke again, but stay tuned for next week where I'll tell you more of that. Like, I've never done that, so that's probably worth an experiment. The other thing is, there's no one. I think when I was first starting stand-up, I made the mistake of separating it out from my other spokes. But like, here you have all these ideas, all these questions. Okay, now I'll give specific advice like that. Like, you should start posting your thoughts and ideas and questions on Facebook, for instance. And they should be, again, your vulnerability. People should be able to say, I can't believe he just wrote that on his Facebook post. And they should say that, and you should be worried what they think of you after each Facebook post. And so you should say, this is what I'm thinking about this morning. Like, I can't go running until my Apple Watch is charged because of these 5 reasons. Does anyone else have this problem? And then you should share it to a couple of different groups you're in, so people see, oh, this is shareable, and then they start sharing it because people want to do what other people are doing. And then you should also post that on LinkedIn. You should answer questions on Quora. You should post everywhere. You don't want to say the topics that you show to the radio shows. Share them, because the audiences are all different.
Yeah.
Your Facebook audience is different than whoever's listening to radio in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
So I used to write the same article in the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times, and then take that article and put it in a book. And no one will ever once mention, hey, I read that already. I read that in the Wall Street Journal, because no one reads the other places.
So actually, one interesting problem I've had, like I have 17,000 Instagram followers. It might be, I think it's less than that, but I'm transposing a number somewhere. Let's make it 17,000. No, it's 14.7 thousand Instagram followers. I'm having trouble converting.
Right, because you're not having trouble converting. Let me see. What's your Instagram account?
Tom Kelly Show. And then while everyone else is looking, Tom Kelly Show on Snapchat, though I don't really work there. I've been Tom Kelly Show on TikTok. TikTok's been driving me crazy. TikTok, I think, is a game of the algorithm. Everybody I know now suddenly thinks they've beaten the Chinese algorithm.
But by the way, you're not having trouble converting at all. I would say, like, Instagram, you're getting about a 3%. Oh, wait, let me just see. I see. There's views and there's likes. Okay, sometimes you're getting like a good 3-4% response. You're getting views. That's about normal conversion on Instagram. So everything converts at about 2%. Like if I tweet, go watch this show, maybe 0.5% of my, listeners on Twitter will click on that link. Maybe even less. So you're getting a normal conversion rate there. You just have to be in many places. So you have some skills and you have some knowledge about lots of different things. Well, answer questions on Quora, write about it on LinkedIn. Hey, here are the 10 skills you need to be a good warm-up comedian, and here's why you'd want to have those skills, even if you're not a warm-up comedian.
So, like, where would you put an article like that?
I will put it on LinkedIn because you know why? What do people do at a job? They have like a ton of meetings in a conference room that are really boring. In other words, if you have the knowledge to do your job, but you also have the skills of a warm-up comedian, you're going to kill in a meeting at a corporate job. So I would put that on LinkedIn and Facebook, by the way. On Facebook, I would put it like, here is my worst experience. Just Facebook, in your status updates, I would put a whole article. Like,
do you have a personal and a fan account?
I do, but I never use the fan account. I only use the personal accounts where I get response. Even though I have like 300,000 followers on the fan account, it's useless to me. The personal account is where I put things, and then I'll share from my personal account to other groups that I'm in. But I always I think I was one of the first doing this back in like 2009, 2010. I'll put full articles as a status update on Facebook, like 3,000 word articles. And that's where your core audience, your people who you're friends with, who your family, I would put like the stuff you're really scared to admit on Facebook. And that's a great focus group to see, hey, I got a decent response here. I'm going to now put this on LinkedIn, Medium. I'm going to find questions to answer on Quora related to this. I'm going to maybe put a Twitter thread about this. I'll just find other places to put this in. Maybe I'll make an Instagram post. I sometimes put articles on an Instagram status update. So there's a little bit more of a character limit there, but that's good, also. So it keeps you tight, the writing. But I would think of more spokes to put things, and you grow a general audience, and your audience gravitates. Oh, now he's going to do a podcast about this. Oh, I'm going to listen to what he says about it.
Here's one thing that I think we've been missing as comedians, and I don't know how to do it. We need some sort of like a comedy co-op, for lack of a better word, where we compile certain shared resources. Like, I'd love to know, like if we had a list of all the good audio editors, all the good video editors.
Okay, so here's do you know that newsletter that's about comedy called Humorism? It's a horrible, horrible newsletter. It's this guy. He's always just complaining about which comedians are politically correct or not. So there's nothing actually about comedy.
I know, but I know.
And I just got it like 19 minutes ago, actually. Seth something.
Yeah,
Seth Simons.
I've heard good and bad things about him.
Okay, so yeah,
is he good? Do you like him? You're like him.
No, I don't. But I read the newsletter because I want to see. And look, he's doing his thing. He's got an audience for his thing, which is kind of the woke audience who gets upset at comedy, I guess. I don't know. But there's nothing actually humorous. Why don't you do an actual newsletter about, what you need to know and have and do for these different types of comedy? And comedians, there's millions of people trying to either want to be stand-up comedians, people who just started, people who've been doing it a while. There's a million topics.
And how do you set up a newsletter? Like this now I sound like my uncle. How do you set up one of these newsletters?
Okay, go to a place like Substack.com. And
Substack you like?
Yeah. And you could actually set up a 4-page newsletter in minutes, but do a free newsletter at first. And then you start tweeting about it in like every episode or every issue. Oh, okay, here's here's the 5 pieces of equipment, or here's the type of clothing a comedian should wear at a club, or here's the 10 skills you need to know as a warm-up comedian, or here's the 5 shows that are currently hiring warm-up comedians. You can't be afraid to give away your secret knowledge.
Well, here's the thing with the warm-up comedian thing, and I almost, this is part of why I hate telling people what I do, is there's only 4 jobs like mine in the city. I don't need anybody else applying. It sounds stupid.
No, I know, but I'm gonna push back a little bit, and I see where you're coming from, and it's okay. Maybe you're right.
That's like me saying, I don't know, James has the hot stock tip on what, like you were talking about setting up your own version of the podcast recorder.
Yeah,
everybody should make a podcast recorder because, or
yeah, but you know what? Guess what? I have said that I am starting a company where I'm creating my own competitor to Zoom just for podcasters. I've described it in detail on my podcast over the past 6, 7, 8 months. If anyone competes, that's fine. But you're the best at what you do. You don't need to worry. You're abundant. You don't need to worry about competition.
Yeah, you do have to worry about it for price point.
Maybe, I don't know.
Trust me on that. Trust me on that.
Well, okay, but if you're doing one show, can't you talk about the other shows that are hiring? Maybe.
No, listen, I don't even want to get too into so here's the deal. Here's the deal with my career is I don't want anybody to, it sounds awful, but I don't want anybody to know my credits. That's why I want to push this podcast. I mean, I really, at this point, I'd rather, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of like knowing you have a good fruit tree. You don't want everybody picking, it's Who Moved My Cheese. I don't need everybody coming to my corner of the Who Moved My Cheese book.
Fair enough. But some things that you're great at, that you have a kind of a monopoly on or abundance in, some things you have to share without fear. I could see some things you keep in. Like, for instance, when I look for investment opportunities, I don't always immediately share them. But most things I do, like if I'm starting a company, I will share it from day one, what I'm doing, long before I finish it, because I'm confident if someone competes with me, they deserve it. If someone doesn't, in most cases, I think no one's going to compete with me. And I'm also coming up with nonstop ideas, so I'm not that worried. You have to have a feeling of abundance. But I get it. Some things you keep close to the vest, but only some things. Everything else, share as much as possible. Like, here are the 10 keys to being a better warm-up comedian than me, or here's the difference between warm-up comedy and stand-up comedy, or here's just 5 clips I like this week. It's Friday clip issue, and here's five clips you have to know about that are just hilarious, or here's 2 specials that came out this week and my reviews of them, or whatever. Like, you could do one of these comedy resource type newsletters. I don't think anyone's doing one because the only one I subscribe to sucks. So no offense, Seth, but the only one I'm subscribing to sucks. So, and you know,
but yet a lot of people, but to your point, and maybe I'm going to email this guy to tell him to see if he could write about my podcast. Either I will get promoted or canceled pretty damn quick.
Yeah, getting canceled is a good way to get listeners, by the way.
It's an idea.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, keep doing all these ideas. It's not just about getting the podcast out there. It's about getting you out there in different ways.
Yeah, no, and listen, and I think we started getting to it again, and I'd love to revisit you either recorded or off air. What I like about talking to you, and as I say this now, 1 hour and 15 minutes into the show, with you, there's always 10 crazy ideas. It's your damn book, Skipping. By the way, are you still pushing that book? Why am I promoting Skipping the Line more than you are?
I'm always pushing it, but I could only push it so much. What I tend to do is I retweet people who have read it and who have commented. And
fine. Well, let me say it to you. The book made a difference. Now, is it the most... Listen, the stuff you're talking about, Napoleon Hill was talking about it in the 40s in the book. There's other ways to get it, but your unique perspective within the 21st century really got me thinking, and I probably should have said this to you an hour and 17 minutes ago now, is I need new doors to knock on and new ways to knock on that door. And you gave me a few ideas for that. You know?
And like, for instance, when you start, let's say you start a newsletter, and it could be about anything, but let's just say it's about resources and comedy and different aspects of comedy that people haven't approached yet. Every issue, put it on Facebook, put it on Twitter, put it on Instagram, mention it on your podcast. sponsor your podcast from your own newsletter. I'll do it right now. This podcast, the James Altucher Show, is sponsored by Tom Kelly's upcoming newsletter, and it's also sponsored by the Tom Kelly Show. You can find it at TomKellyShow.com, or listen on Apple Podcasts, or listen on Spotify.
How much are you and Jay charging for a spot on this show? Maybe that's what I should have just done, is buy a spot at the beginning.
Yeah, you would have saved an hour and a half of time. I don't know, actually. We charge as much as we can. Okay, this is information I don't usually share because...
Oh, well, James, somebody told me that you shouldn't keep this sort of stuff close to the vest. You should give it out to people so everybody knows what they can do.
Well, it's just like I don't share, okay, this is how to be like... as great as me. Like that's like sharing, that's like bragging. I don't want to brag. So that's what I'm scarce with. I'll if it's something that shits on me, I'm happy to talk about it. If I can't, I'm trying to think. Jay, are there any advertisers who have rejected us? That's what I'll share. Jay, what advertisers have rejected us?
I don't think any advertiser has rejected us.
Well, wait, rejected you for you have gone to them or the other way around?
That I've gone to them. I've definitely rejected some advertisers, but okay, though, you know what? Guests have rejected us, though. Who's a recent guest that, okay, I wanted Jordan Peterson to come on my podcast again. He came on the first time. And not only that, when nobody else would film the documentary about him, I had Stand Up New York open the film in New York City for him. And I've also invested in a company Jordan Peterson started, and Jordan didn't come. Said he can't come on my podcast, but I get it. He's been a little ill for a while, and he only went on a limited amount of podcasts. But he rejected coming on my podcast, and I was a little sad about it.
Yeah, I'm not into that. I feel like Seth at Humorism won't be appearing on your podcast any soon after the last few minutes.
Well, the invitation is open to him, but
actually, did you invite him? All kidding aside, did you invite him on?
No. I really think he does and by the way, this is not about him personally. Nobody should attack him, but I really think he does a disservice to comedy calling a newsletter humorism when all he does is talk about people who are politically incorrect. In a comedy club, people say shit. That's just
hang on. There's a difference. I'm going to take this guy Seth's side for a second.
Sure.
There's a difference between comedy and humor.
Okay, tell me.
Comedy
I agree with you, by the way. But
I think,
tell me.
And it's funny. Sometimes I've had someone. Oh, and I got so pissed about this, James. So pissed. Somebody called me a humorist. And I'm like, no, a humorist is like, yeah, I'm a nice person who's kind of like, like comedy is funny every 15 seconds. It's a reaction every 15 seconds.
And it's also, crowd work. It's likability, which is disconnected from humor.
However you do it, I'm a comedian. I may be a crowd work comedian at times, but I am a crowd work comedian, and I get a reaction hopefully every 15 seconds if I'm doing it well. Every 20 if I'm doing it bad, every 10 if I'm doing it great. Humor is you could take an hour and it's, oh yeah, that's kind of funny. Like the payoff isn't as quick. It's different.
Right. That's why if you get skills at stand-up comedy and then you take that into public speaking or being an MC at auctions, as you mentioned, you've 10x'd your ability in public speaking because the audience of a public speaker doesn't expect to laugh every 15 seconds. You're great if you make them laugh every 2 minutes because the speaker right before you didn't make them laugh at all. So that's the real use of comedy skills. And also it makes you a better performer. Like I could always tell someone who's not into stand-up, they go on stage and it almost looks like they're an actor or they're acting. Whereas a stand-up comedian, there's this notion that it's not about telling jokes, it's about telling the truth and in a funny way or a humorous way. And just telling jokes, I've seen some comedians do that, it doesn't work as well. Or just like acting a role doesn't do as well. But this guy with humorism, he's just like, oh, this one person said something about, I don't know, some group, and that's real. The comedy owner should have called him out and should never book him again. Like a comedy club, nobody's going to go to a comedy club to stand up there and be a racist. Like that's the last thing racists do is go up on stage and be stand-up comedians. So it's just ridiculous to call out every single person who said one joke you don't like. And that's what this guy does. And I would say I've said it to his face. He knows what I think. So it's not like I'm saying something that's a surprise.
Yeah, I don't know the guy. I'm going to have to look him up. See, that's the other thing too, is because of the nature of my career, I kind of live in a bubble. I don't follow these things. I don't subscribe to this guy. I have a Twitter account, but Twitter and Instagram seem to show me hot cheerleaders much more than other comedians. I guess it's a problem with what I'm hitting like on.
Yeah, right. You're in an echo chamber of hot cheerleaders.
Yeah. So, or maybe that's what I should be doing is I should be cheerleading. I think I got my answer, James. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will just add, just keep thinking of the spokes to get your unique word out. And then sometimes you have to think about, what is your unique word? What is it that you want to say?
Oh, I'll tell you right now. My unique word is I'm trying to do better.
Okay, that's a great thing because then let me ask this. How today are you trying to do better? I know you're coming on my podcast. I failed you completely. But what other ways are you trying to do better?
So I've been dieting. I'm down 15 pounds.
You're looking great. I can tell on Squadcast.
I am.
Shout out to Squadcast.
Thank you, Squadcast. Thank you, Squadcast. Thank you, JD Engineer, for making me use this amazing platform. Are we making money off them? Squadcast?
No.
Oh, fuck you, Squadcast. Anyway, no, but what else did I get out of these guys? How am I trying to do better? I came up here to Maine to quiet down for a while. I'm trying to track my revelations. What else am I doing? I'm trying to, I'm going to church. It sounds stupid, but I'm going to church once a week. I don't even know if I'm necessarily religious, but I like going to a quiet place and praying to whatever the hell God is for me once a week. And by the way, I go to church on Mondays. For any Catholics listening out there, Catholic church is so much better on Mondays. It's short. They get you in and out in half an hour. They don't even bother passing the plate. They feel like if you are at church on a Monday, you got enough problems. You keep the dollar.
Well, let me ask you a question. What's the funniest thing that you've ever learned about Jesus? What's the funniest thing Jesus has ever done? Is there an answer to that? Is he just not a funny guy?
So I'll tell you, it's funny. I have real therapy at 4:00, so I got to go in 4 minutes. But I'll give you a great story that a guy, Joe Starr, a Long Island comic and actor, once told me. The Jesus Theory of Comedy. So true story. This is in the Bible. And I'll tell it to you the way Joe Starr told it to me as a comic. He's like, 2,000 years ago, there was a guy named Jesus Christ. And one day at the age of 12, Jesus Christ woke up and said, "Holy cow, I'm the Son of God." And this is in the Bible. This is in the New Testament. Jesus goes down from wherever his house is. He goes down to the temple and he gives a great little lecture to all the people in the temple. And and the people really thought he gave a great chat. And then the rabbi said, hey, stop, Jesus, you're not the Son of God. You're Joe the Carpenter's kid. Get the heck out of here, buddy. So Jesus leaves. And true story, this also in the Bible. Nobody knows really where Jesus went from age 12 to 33. But he goes around to all these little towns in the Middle East. He goes to Israel. He goes to Jerusalem. He goes to Bethlehem. He goes to Damascus. And then he comes back to Nazareth about 20 years later, and they throw a parade for him. And they're like, "Holy cow, Jesus, we knew you were the Son of God. We knew you could do it." He built up such a following that the moral of the story is that even Jesus had to play the road to be seen as a hero in his hometown.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, that's really interesting because I always use this example when people can't get a promotion at their job, but they can go somewhere else and they're a hero. The one place where Jesus was made fun of was in Nazareth.
Yeah, even Jesus had to play the road is sort of the joke. And for real, though, you have to be even the Son of God. And I know you grew up Jewish and
I read the New Testament. I was practically a Jew for Jesus as a 6-year-old.
But saying this from a fictionalizing Jesus for a second, even the Son of God had to go somewhere else to be seen as a hit in his hometown. And that's about where I'm at right now is I feel like and you're right, maybe Jesus did the spokes in the wheel. by going to all these towns and building up a following in other places. Instead of going to Nazareth, or instead of going to Bethlehem, and instead of going to Damascus, instead of going to all these other towns, Jesus went to Quorum, Jesus went to Twitter, Jesus went to Facebook. And I guess that's what I'm doing. And yes, I am comparing myself to Jesus an hour into this, knowing that lightning will strike if my Irish father hears this.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, I think Jesus was really funny when he had to pay taxes. So, there's a story where render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And so they come to Jesus to pay his taxes, and he tells Peter, go fishing, and there'll be a coin in every fish. Why couldn't he just hand the tax collectors some coins? Why did Peter have to pull it out of the mouths of fish? And so was it like a joke on the tax collectors that all the coins had the smell of fish? Like that was his way of paying?
To your point, I think there's a lot of great a la carte Christian lessons in the Bible.
Yes.
Like, listen, there's other things. Hate gays, if you read it that way. But the easy New Testament things. Love thy neighbor. Pay your taxes. Pay what you're owed. Silly lessons we could apply to our lives.
Yeah. I actually think, look, Jesus was like the first superhero. I think there's beautiful stories in there. I always love the story. He's recruiting Simon, later Peter, and Simon says, I'll go with you, but I gotta bury my dad first, who just died. And Jesus says, let the dead bury the dead. And he just starts walking away, and Peter has to follow him. Like, Jesus just didn't give a shit. Like, he was just
it's
good
just
with it.
Time to move.
And the past is the past. And you either follow him into the present or you stay in the past. And so I always think that story is very beautiful. I also like the fact that in order for him to ever heal the blind, he had to spit in their eyes. So that's the way he would heal the blind, is you would have to get spit on by Jesus if you wanted to start seeing again.
I'm going to be honest. My priest kind of glossed over that detail. The spitting detail.
Well, he probably glanced over the masturbation story in the Old Testament as well. So.
And good night. I got to pee. That's it. On Jesus masturbating, my friend. That's the note that I'm going to say I got to call my real therapist for.
It was Onan in the Old Testament, not Jesus, just to be clear. But yes, enjoy therapy. As always, Tom, I will talk to you soon, and, give me a shout anytime.
James, you're a friend. Thank you for sharing your wisdom as always. Have a great night, my friend. And Jay, thank you, Jay, for setting me up.
Talk to you later. Tom.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.